document my PT Cruiser, 2004 PT Cruiser wheel bearing replacement. Hopefully I'll get it done. First thing I've got to do is take off this wheel, so I'm going to jack it up, put it on a jack stand, and then start digging in. Okay, after getting the wheel off, I used a 3/4 inch socket in my handy dandy air impact wrench. The next thing to do is get the brake caliper and bracket off, and to do that you have this 18mm bolt here, and I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but there's one back down here. So for that I've got an 18mm that I'm going to, I've already loosened that, so I'm not really like Superman or something. If you saw me in person you'd think, wow, you are Superman, but no, just kidding, you wouldn't. Okay. And then there's the second one down here. Now, one very important thing is you don't want to let it hang by this flexible hose here, because it can be well, it could damage your hose, and that's the last thing you want to do, is have to fix your brakes while you're fixing your wheel bearing. By the way, I've read that you need to make sure that this ground strap is good and connected here. Mine's connected, I'm good with that. I'm gonna go get something now to hang this up here. Okay, all I've done is just took a piece of wire and I looped it up high here, and I'm just gonna remove the caliper and bracket and all. Okay, it wasn't impossible, it just, like I mentioned earlier, I'm not really Superman despite what I look like, so I did need both hands to kind of pry that off. And so it will all come off as one unit, like so. And then what I'm going to do is just find a convenient way to wire it up there. Okay, for the most part the spindle is now out of our way. Let's see, and that's as wide as we can go. It's more or less out of our way up here, suspended by that wire. There's no pressure on the brake line, wherever it is anyway. There's no pressure on it. What I'm going to do next is just take this little keeper off, take a screwdriver and sort of try to turn it and whatever, get that thing off, and then this rotor will come off. Okay, I wasn't a bit too gentle with this little keeper here. It did end up breaking. Let's see, the brake is there somewhere anyway. The rotor then should just come right off on the PT Cruiser, but my wheel bearing has been howling. I'm kind of surprised that I'm not seeing any movement. Boy, that would suck if it's the other side. We're going to go with it anyway. Next thing we need to do is go ahead and get, I'm going to call this the hub here, the wheel hub. That'll be this disc here with the wheel studs. The drive shaft will go through this. The drive shaft will go through that, back into the transmission that way. And it's just held here with a nut. I believe it's going to be 32mm. So I'll have to get this cotter pin out, get this little cover off, take the nut off, and then I should be able to push the axle back in there. However, the hub here is an assembly with the bearing pressed inside it, and then the outside of the bearing is pressed into this, the steering knuckle. Here is where I took off the caliper earlier, the caliper mounting, two 18mm bolts. In order to get the steering knuckle loose from the car now, I'll take out these two bolts and that hold the top of the steering knuckle into the strut. I'll have to loosen the tie rod. There will be a nut on the bottom here. I'll take it off and then we'll press that out, and then there will be a nut down here that I will loosen. Okay, Rick, get the camera going. Nut down here that I'll loosen, that I can then get the lower ball joint loose. I'm going to start with the easiest part first. I'm going to attack these two bad boys. What we have here are 21mm nuts. I've already broken them loose because I'm doing this one-handed. Not all jobs are intended to be one-handed. I think you understand. Anyway, 21mm. I'm just going to go ahead and take these nuts most of the way off. Okay, I've loosened these things off quite a bit, but they're still on there in such a way that they're almost just to cover up the threads a little bit. But I'm going to take Mr. Tap Happy here and kind of persuade these little bolts to go through. As you can see, they're knurled. I don't know if you can see it very well, but they're knurled on the end, so they may be a little less happy about coming out than your average everyday ordinary bolts. But I'm going to go ahead and see about pushing them through. Before I get too crazy and take them all the way out, though, I'm going to go ahead and start getting the lower junk loosened too, which again are going to be the tie rod end and the lower ball joint. In addition to using 18mm head bolts on the caliper bracket, they also use 18mm on the tie rod end here, and they use 18mm on this lower ball joint. Okay, just to point out that Chrysler does have a sense of humor. I pointed out earlier that's an 18mm for the ball joint, lower ball joint. On the other side, though, is the bolt here, and that's 15mm. So I had to hold the bolt with a 15mm. On the tie rod end, as I loosen that bolt off, or that nut off, just enough so that I could get Mr. Happy Persuader, and I gave it a little wrap or two, and it finally came loose, like so. So the tie rod end can be picked up with a little shield and moved out of the way, like so. Next thing I need to do is make sure I have that loose. I don't know how tight this ball joint will be, but it's sort of a clamp the way that works. So hopefully I'll just be able to lift it up and pull it out after I get this loose and get these two bolts completely out. So the next thing I'm going to do is start working on this. So what I'm going to need for that are my handy dandy needle nose pliers. Take my pliers and give it the attempt to straighten them. Okay. This little cover keeper of fun will come off along after the cotter key, and then there's this little wavy washer that should come off as well. Don't forget to put that back on when the time comes. Okay, I mentioned that I thought, and I am correct, that big ass nut, that big nut there is 32mm. It would have been good to loosen that before you took everything off if you don't have like an impact.
because there's no way that you can really hold that otherwise. So I'm gonna rely on Mr. Impact to do its trick. So here we go. Thank you, Mr. Impact. Big ass nut. I mean, rather large nut. Once you do that, the axle can go in and out pretty easily, and you'll see there's another washer in there. Okay, so now I know that that's loose, my tie rod's off, my ball joint should be loose. I've got to get these two little bad boys out, and once I do, I should be able to just yank this whole steering knuckle off, and then we can start looking at the business end of the bearing and how it's situated in both the knuckle and then the hub. Peacefully. Okay, you're not sure if you're dealing with Hercules or Einstein here. I know that's the fact, but nevertheless, get those bad boys out. Just have to finagle them. Just kind of a little pushing and pulling, turning of the bolt. And I had a couple of swear words in there, but I thought them to myself rather than share them with the world. So I think the neighbors are listening to me. But nevertheless, okay, I've got those loose. Got that loose. Got the ball joint loose. Now, this axle will just slide through, hopefully. And we should be able to just muscle this thing out. Okay, one of the keys here is to go ahead and, on that ball joint, is to go ahead and take that bolt completely out, because you'll see here on the shaft of the ball joint itself, it's got this little cutaway. Well, your bolt rides in there, and as long as that stupid thing's in there, even Hercules can't get that thing out. So there it is. I don't think you should let that dangle too much, but right now it's just riding comfortably there on top of that A-arm. Now, I don't know, if I were done for the day, Bud Light would be in order, but I'm not yet, so Bud Light, she will have to wait.